The bonded hall was already full when Celine Virel entered. Council elders lined the upper platform. Nobles filled the silver balconies. Guards stood along the walls in ceremonial armor, while servants rushed between rows carrying wine and flame bowls for the bond ceremony. At the center of it all stood Alpha Kaelin Draith, her fiancé, future Alpha of the Draith territory, the man she had stood beside publicly for 3 years. A servant adjusted the edge of Celine's white ceremony cloak. "You look perfect for the bonding," the girl whispered nervously. Celine gave a small nod. "Where's Kaelin?" "Speaking with the council." That should have been normal. Instead, something felt wrong. Kaelin barely looked at her when she stepped onto the ceremony platform beside him. Celine noticed immediately. "So," she said quietly, "you plan to ignore me through the entire ceremony?" Kaelin exhaled once, but didn't answer. Before Celine could press further, the council elder suddenly stepped forward. "By order of the bonded council," he announced loudly, "a confirmed mate bond has been identified before the completion of tonight's union." Murmurs exploded across the hall. Celine frowned. "What?" The elder turned toward the side entrance. "Bring her forward." The doors opened. A woman entered slowly, escorted by council guards. Young, beautiful, unknown. The entire hall shifted instantly. Celine looked at Kaelin. "Explain." Kaelin finally faced her, but not the way she expected. "From today onward," he announced calmly, "she is my chosen mate." Silence hit the hall like a physical force. Celine stared at him, then at the woman now standing beside him. "You're serious," she said. Kaelin's jaw tightened slightly. "The bond was confirmed this morning." "And ours?" No answer. That was answer enough. One council elder cleared his throat awkwardly. "The engagement bond between Lady Celine and Alpha Kaelin will now be formally dissolved." "Broken," Celine corrected calmly. The hall went silent again. Kaelin lowered his voice. "This doesn't need to become a scene." Celine looked at him for one long second, then nodded once. "Good," she said, "because I'm done standing in one. And with every noble in the territory watching." Celine stepped off the platform and walked away from her own bond ceremony. The doors of the bonded hall slammed shut behind Celine. Cold air hit her instantly as she crossed the outer palace steps. Inside, the ceremony continued without her. That part almost made her laugh. Footsteps followed seconds later. Fast. Familiar. "Celine." She kept walking. Kaelin caught up beside her near the lower courtyard. "Stop for a second." "No. Can you not do this right now?" Celine finally looked at him. "Do what? Leave the ceremony where you replaced me publicly?" Kaelin lowered his voice immediately. "You're making this worse. I'm not the one who brought another woman onto the platform. That bond wasn't planned, but announcing her was." A pause. Kaelin ran a hand through his hair impatiently. "The council forced the declaration. You still stood beside her. That doesn't erase what we had." Celine stared at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "That's interesting," she said. "What is?" "You think this conversation is about saving our relationship." Kaelin frowned. "What else would it be about?" Celine stopped walking entirely now. "It's about respect," she said. "And you already killed that inside the hall." Kaelin stepped closer. "You're angry right now." "Yes. You'll calm down." Celine almost smiled at that. "You really think I'm staying?" His silence confirmed it immediately. Kaelin exhaled sharply. "Celine, you know how territory bonds work. Political arrangements change. So do people. That's not fair." Neither was tonight. A few servants near the courtyard entrance quickly looked away, pretending not to listen. Kaelin noticed them too and lowered his voice further. "Don't embarrass yourself over this." That finally did it. Celine's expression changed instantly. Not hurt, not emotional. Done. "You already handled the embarrassing part for both of us," she said calmly. Kaelin's jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "No," Celine replied. "I'm adjusting." Then she stepped around him. Kaelin turned sharply. "Where are you even going?" Celine didn't stop walking. Away from people who think I'll accept being second. And for the first time since the ceremony began, Kaylin looked genuinely unsettled. Celine crossed the lower courtyard without slowing. Servants moved out of her path immediately. Guards looked away the second she passed. No one wanted to be caught staring at the woman who had just walked out of her own bonding ceremony. The palace gates stood ahead, almost open, almost freedom. Then a voice stopped her. "You're leaving faster than I expected." Celine slowed slightly, not because she recognized the voice, because everyone else around her suddenly went silent. She turned. Alpha King Rhaegor Vale stood near the gate entrance, dark coat hanging open over ceremonial black armor. 2 royal guards stood behind him, but neither moved or spoke. They didn't need to. Rhaegor's presence filled the courtyard by itself. Selena recognized him immediately. Kaylin's strongest rival, the Alpha King whose territory had spent years competing against the Draithlands for dominance. Rhaegor's gaze settled on her calmly. "I thought most people at least waited until after the ceremony to abandon the palace." Celine crossed her arms. "I thought most guests minded their own business." A faint reaction touched his expression, almost amusement. "Fair," he said. Behind her, palace doors opened again. Kaylin stepped into the courtyard immediately. "Step away from her." Rhaegor didn't move. Instead, he glanced toward Kaylin casually. "You recover quickly for someone who just destroyed his own engagement." Kaylin's jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you." "That depends," Rhaegor replied. "Does she still belong to you?" Silence. Celine answered before Kaylin could. "No." That shifted the atmosphere instantly. Even the guards noticed it. Kaylin stepped closer. "Celine." She didn't look at him. Rhaegor did. Slowly. Carefully. Like he was reevaluating something. Then he asked the question directly. "This is the woman you chose to humiliate publicly?" Kaylin's voice sharpened. "Watch yourself." But Rhaegor ignored him completely. His attention stayed on Celine. "And you're still walking out alone," he observed. Celine met his gaze evenly. Not for long. That answer landed. Kaylin stiffened immediately. Rhaegor tilted his head slightly. Then, for the first time, he looked genuinely interested. The courtyard tension spread fast. Servants stopped moving. Guards along the gate entrance straightened instinctively. Even the council members watching from the upper balcony had gone silent, because no one missed what was happening now. Selene stood between 2 alpha rulers, and neither man was backing away. Kaylin descended the palace steps slowly, fury tightening across his face. "This conversation ends now." Selene looked at him calmly. "Then stop talking." "That's enough," Kaylin snapped. "You've made your point." "My point?" Selene repeated. "You replaced me in front of an entire bonded hall. The bond changed." "You did." Kaylin stepped closer. "You're still under Draith protection." "No," Selene replied instantly. "I was under illusion." That hit harder than expected. A few guards exchanged quick looks. Kaylin noticed. His voice dropped lower. "You don't speak to me like this publicly." Selene almost laughed. "Publicly seems important to you tonight." Rhaegor stayed silent beside her, watching, measuring. Kaylin finally turned toward him. "Why are you still standing here?" Rhaegor answered calmly. "Because this became interesting. This is internal territory business. Not anymore." Kaylin's expression darkened immediately. "Careful." Rhaegor's response came smooth and effortless. "Or what?" Silence cracked through the courtyard. Then Kaylin reached toward Celine's arm. "Come inside." Celine stepped back before he could touch her. "No." That single word echoed harder than shouting. Kaylin stared at her. "You're embarrassing yourself." Celine shook her head once. "No, I'm embarrassing you." Another silence followed, longer this time. Then Rhaegor finally moved, one deliberate step forward, not aggressive, worse, protective. Kaylin noticed instantly. "Don't involve yourself in this." Rhaegor glanced at him coldly. "You involved everyone the second you humiliated her publicly." Kaylin's voice sharpened. She's still tied to my territory. Celine cut in immediately. No, she said. I'm not yours anymore. The courtyard went completely still. Because this wasn't private now. This was public rejection. And every person watching understood exactly what it meant. Kaylin grabbed Celine's wrist the second she turned away again. Not hard. Possessive. Enough, he said sharply. You're coming back inside. Celine looked down at his hand first, then at him. You lost the right to touch me in that hall. Kaylin lowered his voice immediately. Stop making this worse. You keep saying that like I'm the problem. You're standing beside my rival in front of the entire palace. You brought another woman to our bonding ceremony. Kaylin's jaw tightened hard enough to show. That wasn't supposed to happen publicly. Celine stared at him in disbelief. That's your defense? Before Kaylin could answer, another hand closed around his wrist. Firm, controlled, Rhaegor. Release her, he said calmly. Kaylin yanked his arm back immediately. This doesn't concern you. Rhaegor stepped between them slightly. You keep repeating that. It's becoming less convincing. Kaylin looked past him at Celine. You know me. That's exactly why I'm leaving. The bond situation changed everything. No, Selena replied. It revealed everything. A few guards near the courtyard entrance shifted nervously. Nobody interrupted. Nobody was stupid enough. Kaylin exhaled sharply. Celine, listen to me carefully. That council confirmation happened too fast. I didn't have time to handle this properly. Celine crossed her arms. Properly? Yes. You mean privately? Silence. That answer hit perfectly. Kaylin's frustration finally cracked through. What do you want me to say? Selena answered immediately. That you chose her. It wasn't that simple. You announced it publicly. The council forced the declaration, but not the decision. Kaylin opened his mouth, then stopped, because he couldn't deny it. Rhaegor watched the entire exchange carefully before finally speaking again. Quiet. Dangerously quiet. This is the woman you intended to marry? He asked Kaylin. And this is how you fight to keep her? Kaylin's eyes snapped toward him. Stay out of this. Rhaegor's expression didn't change. Then Celine stepped backward, not toward the palace, toward him. And suddenly every guard in the courtyard understood the same thing at once. This confrontation was no longer about a broken engagement. It was becoming a choice between two alpha kings. The courtyard had gone completely silent. No guards moved. No servants whispered. Every person watching understood they were witnessing something dangerous now. Kaylin noticed Celine stepping closer to Rhaegor, and his expression darkened instantly. Celine, he warned. She ignored him. Kaylin stepped forward immediately. Don't do this. Celine looked at him calmly. You already did. That's not fair. You lost the right to ask for fair when you replaced me publicly. Kaylin's voice lowered sharply. You're acting emotional. That almost made her laugh. Instead, she asked, Do you hear yourself? Rhaegor stayed beside her silently, arms crossed, watching Kaylin unravel in real time. Kaylin pointed toward him. You think standing beside my rival fixes this? Celine answered immediately. No, but it proves I can leave. That landed hard. Kaylin's jaw flexed. You're still tied to my territory. No, she replied. I was tied to an expectation. And now? Celine turned slightly toward Rhaegor. The movement alone shifted the atmosphere again. Rhaegor looked at her steadily. Careful, he said. This decision becomes permanent the second you make it publicly. Celine didn't hesitate. Good. Kaylin stared at her. What are you saying? Celine faced him fully one last time. I'm saying I don't stay where I'm replaced. Silence. Clean. Sharp. Final. Kaylin stepped toward her again. You don't mean that. I do. You're angry. I'm finished. That hit differently, because for the first time since the ceremony began, Kaylin looked uncertain instead of defensive. Rhaegor noticed it too. Then he asked Selene directly, Does this involve me now? Every person in the courtyard waited for her answer. Selene looked at Kaylin first, at the man who expected her loyalty no matter what he did. Then she looked at Rhaegor, at the man who hadn't asked her to shrink herself to stay. Yes, she said. One word. Public. Irreversible. And the moment she stepped fully beside Rhaegor, Kaelin realized he wasn't losing an argument anymore. He was losing her. Kaelin recovered fast. Too fast. His expression hardened again as the shock faded from his face. This isn't happening, he said coldly. Selene almost smiled. It already did. Kaelin ignored her and looked directly at Rhaegor. You think you can walk into my territory and take what belongs to me? Rhaegor's reply came immediately. She answered that question herself. Kaelin stepped forward. This is political interference. No, Rhaegor said calmly. This is consequence. The courtyard tension snapped tighter. Several Draith guards moved subtly closer. Rhaegor's guards responded instantly. Nobody drew weapons. Yet. Selene noticed it immediately. Stop. Both sides froze. Kaelin looked at her sharply. You don't understand what happens if you walk out with him. Selene crossed her arms. Then explain it. You become part of his territory. And? You stand against me publicly. That already happened inside the hall. Kaelin exhaled sharply. Selene, think carefully. I did, while you stood beside another woman. That shut him up again. Rhaegor glanced toward Selene briefly. You understand what standing beside me means? Yes. You'll be targeted. I already was. You'll lose your place here. Selene looked around the courtyard slowly, at the palace, at the nobles watching from the balconies, at the guards pretending not to stare, then back at Rhaegor. I already lost it the second he chose someone else publicly. Silence followed. Rhaegor studied her for a second longer, then nodded once, like he had reached a decision too. He turned toward Kaelin afterward. She's not yours anymore. Kaelin's voice sharpened instantly. You don't get to decide that. Rhaegor's gaze turned cold. Neither do you. Another dangerous silence spread. Then Kaelin looked back at Selene one final time. If you walk out beside him, he warned, there's no undoing it. Selene met his gaze steadily. That's the point. Then Rhaegor stepped aside slightly and held the gate path open for her. Not commanding, not pulling, offering. Selene walked forward without hesitation. And for the first time all night, someone chose her openly. The courtyard gates opened slowly. Heavy chains rattled overhead as the palace guards pulled them apart wide enough for passage. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved to stop them, because nobody knew how. Selene walked toward the exit beside Rhaegor while dozens of eyes followed her across the stone courtyard. Every noble on the balconies watched silently. Every guard understood what this meant politically. And Kaelin stood exactly where she left him, still trying to process the fact that she actually chose to leave. Halfway to the gates, his voice finally broke the silence. Selene. She stopped walking. Rhaegor stopped too, but said nothing. Slowly, Selene turned her head slightly toward Kaelin. Yes? Kaelin took a step forward. You're making a mistake. Selene's expression didn't change. No, she replied calmly. I made that mistake when I stayed loyal to someone who treated me like an option. That's not what this was. You announced another woman beside me in front of the entire territory. The bond was real. So was our engagement. Kaelin looked frustrated now instead of confident. You think walking away with him fixes what happened? Selene answered immediately. No, it ends it. That landed hard across the courtyard. Kaelin tried again. You'll regret this. This time Selene fully turned toward him. Not emotional, not angry, certain. No, she said quietly. I already regretted staying with you. Silence followed instantly. Even the servants near the gates looked stunned, because Kaelin had no response. Not a single one. Rhaegor glanced at Selene briefly, then toward Kaelin. You lost her before she walked out, he said calmly. Kaelin's jaw tightened sharply. This isn't over. Rhaegor's expression barely shifted. For her, it is. Then he looked at Selene. Ready? She faced forward again immediately. Yes, and together, They walked through the palace gates while the entire territory watched the future Luna leave beside another Alpha King. Without hesitation, without apology, without looking back. The palace gates closed behind them with a heavy, final sound. Selene didn't stop walking. Cold wind swept across the outer road as the palace lights faded slowly behind them, but she never looked back once. Beside her, Rhaegor matched her pace easily, not ahead of her, not leading her, walking with her. That difference mattered immediately. Behind them, guards remained stationed along the palace walls, watching silently as their former future Luna disappeared into rival territory beside the one Alpha Kalen hated most. Rhaegor glanced sideways at her after several minutes of silence. "You chose quickly," he said. Selene let out a quiet breath. "No," he decided quickly. "I just responded. That usually takes people longer." "I had enough time while standing on that platform." Rhaegor almost smiled at that. Almost. Ahead, the road curved toward the northern forest line separating the territories. Far enough now that the palace couldn't call her back. Far enough that Kalen's authority no longer reached her. Rhaegor looked forward again. "You understand what happens tomorrow? Political outrage? Among other things." Selene shrugged lightly. "Let them be outraged. You're calmer than most people after destroying a territorial alliance." She finally looked at him directly. "He destroyed it first." That answer earned a small nod. Accurate. Behind them, faint movement appeared along the distant palace balcony. Kalen, watching, still standing there, still too late. Selene noticed him too, but kept walking. Rhaegor's voice lowered slightly. "You don't intend to go back?" "No." "Not even if he asks properly this time?" Selene answered immediately. "He already said everything I needed to hear." Silence settled briefly again. Then Rhaegor spoke one final time. "Good." Selene glanced at him. "That's all?" "For now." A faint smile almost touched her expression. Then both of them continued forward together into the dark road ahead. While behind them, Alpha Kalen Draith remained alone inside the palace courtyard. Watching the rival, he created himself walk away with the woman he thought would never leave.